Hello, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Stone, and this is your writing lesson today. We're getting ready to start our narrative paper pretty soon, and you should have already watched a video. I wasn't talking on it, but she went over the different parts of the writing diamond, and what we're going to do today is we're taking pages 6 and 7 out of your binder, and we're basically going to go through this story like she went through the one that you've already highlighted. I want to make sure that you understand what kind of narrative I'm looking at, and the length of it is going to be about this long, and so it should be any more than 2 pages typed. But we're going to go through your paper, and we're going to talk about the section, and then you're going to do that section for your paper. Then we'll move on to the next section, and then you'll do that section. So I'm going to walk you through this paper to make sure we completely understand how to write a narrative using the narrative diamond. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to look at this story. And in the diamond, our very first section is going to be the entertaining beginning. Alright, so I want you to take your red, and you can use colored pencils, or you can even use markers on this, because we're going to and so I want you to do is I'm going to read this to you, and then I am going to show you what I want you to mark on your paper. And then when we're done, you need to put this in your doc folder and turn it in when you come back to school. So this story is about a desert quest, okay? A quest is another name for like an adventure. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start reading, and I want you to take your red marker or colored pencil, and I want you to wait until I get done showing you what to highlight, because we tend to highlight too much if you go ahead of me. So it says, I stepped out into the glaring sunlight, closing the door to the cabin. My backpack rested lightly on my shoulders, and the water canteen I had filled earlier was strapped around my waist. It was my first day in the desert, and I was ready for an adventure. Alright, so the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your red marker or colored pencil, and you're going to underline the very first section. And according to our writing diamond, alright, and you're going to write everything that I write on here, you're going to write on your paper. Okay, this is going to be your entertaining beginning. Okay, so my entertaining beginning is going to be in red. And so when we do your paper, you're going to notice I had your home teacher look over the rubric, and a rubric is what the requirements for your paper are going to be. And I even give you how many sentences I want this to be. Alright, so it's not going to be a huge long paper, very specific things I want you to do. And we're going to talk about what kind of hook this is, I think on the next writing lesson that I do. So this is your entertaining beginning. Alright, now according to the writing diamond, the very next section that we're supposed to go through is a story critical character, setting, or an object. Now for your Humphrey paper, I am requiring you to do an critical setting, because he's going to be taking an adventure, and it's very important for me to be able to hear, or not hear, but able to read where his adventure is taking place. So it says, glancing around, I noticed the landscape for the first time. The ground was dry and parched. Odd-shaped cacti stood up like sentries on the barren earth. The heat shimmered in the morning sunlight. There was no shade to be seen for miles. I began to walk down the well-trodden path. Rocky outcroppings stuck out from the ground. I think that was a misprint. From the ground surrounding the trail. My feet made a trail of dust in my wake, and I shuffled them to create a dust cloud. The dust rose heavy and thick all around me. Now this is a very descriptive paragraph about a story critical setting. So I want you to take your green, and I want you to underline this paragraph. Now, if you'll notice, I took an entire paragraph to describe my setting. I was very descriptive on what it looked like. I should be able to close my eyes and see a picture of where Humphrey is in your story that you're going to write for me. And so you have to be very, very descriptive on your setting. And so this is going to be a story critical setting. Okay, and the setting is what you're going to be required to do for your paper. And so I wanted to show you an example of what a story critical setting sounded like. Very descriptive. I was very descriptive on what the desert looked like. Now, the next section on your narrative diamond is going to be your suspense. Now, let me just tell you something about suspense. We always think a suspense has to be scary. No, it does not. Suspense just is going to leave you wondering about certain things about your adventure. Okay, it does not have to be scary at all. Suspense is just going to create anticipation about what's coming next. That buzzing sound is my phone, so I'm ignoring it. All right, so I want you to take your orange colored pencil or marker, okay, and it says, suddenly I heard an odd tinkling sound like someone was playing a set of maracas. I was sure that I was the only one out here this morning. I walked a few more feet and stopped in my tracks. The dust cloud cleared, and that was when I noticed the unhappy reptile. My heart began to race and my mind was a jumble. The markings on its back looked like brown diamonds enclosed in black bands. There were stripes on the tail of a rattler, and it stood straight up. There in front of me was a rattlesnake that stretched from one side of the path to the other. The viper raised its head, and I stared at the forked tongue. There's another misspelling there, all right? So this is the suspense section of your paper. Now in this one, it is a little bit scary. You're encountering a rattlesnake, but it doesn't have to be scary. It just has to create anticipation. So take your orange colored pencil or marker, and I want you to underline this section of your paper, because what we're doing is we're creating anticipation that takes you from the story critical setting all the way down to the main idea, because that's what's next. The main idea is next. And so now I have all of this, which is my, what was it again? My suspense. Okay, and when I get to the suspense part of your paper, we're going to go through 3 different types of suspense, talking about story questions, and some of you guys have heard of the magic of 3 and different things like that. But we're not going to talk about that right now, because I'm going to go through each one of these sections at a time. And so in your paper we will go through entertaining beginnings. We'll talk about it in detail, and then you're going to write the entertaining beginning for your story. Then that's all the farther you're going to go until we get down to the set. Do each section at a time. All right. So the very next section is the longest section, and that's going to be your main event. And your main event is something that is drawn out. It is created, and you're going to put it in slow motion, and you're going to tell me what you're doing. Now, there's a danger in going in slow motion. There's a danger in going in slow motion that you put in way too much stuff. You're going to make it very concise, which means very precise. On the rubric I gave you, it says it has to be 3 to 5 sentences. I don't want it shorter than paragraphs. I don't want it shorter than 3 paragraphs, and I don't want it longer than 5 paragraphs. All right? So you have a framework that I want to write in, and so you need to be very precise on what you're talking about. So I want you to take your blue marker or colored pencil, and it says, my first instinct was to turn and run, but I remembered the guidebook I had read before coming on the journey. My thoughts began to clear. Do not startle the rattlesnake, as it can strike at the speed faster than the human eye can see, I muttered out loud. Good thing I remembered. Thank goodness I had worn my sturdy hiking boots and long pants, I thought. The guidebook suggested clothing that a rattlesnake may not be able to penetrate. Okay, so this is the very first paragraph of my main idea or my main event. I am starting to tell you exactly what is happening in the adventure. All right? So, now I also want you to notice that my beginning, where my beginning is, it happens in the desert. At the end of my entertainment beginning, I'm in the desert, okay? So, it's kind of one of those things where you try to make your beginning as close to your main event as possible. All right, because we want a lot of details about your setting and the anticipation, but we don't want you, starting in your car. Well, I get up in the morning and I packed my backpack and I decided what to bring. Then I got in my car. Okay, we don't need all of those details in the beginning because that makes it too boring. And so you need to try to make your beginning as close to your main event as possible. Now, this is just paragraph 1 of my main event. If you look on page 7, you're going to see more paragraphs. So it says, blinking the sweat out of my eye as I noticed that the snake had not moved in quite some time. The hissing and buzzing sound persisted, and I realized the snake was warning me to stay away. I'm not moving, I whispered to it. I promise. Just then an idea came to me. If I stand like a statue and hold my breath, maybe it will just move on. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and counted to 10. My secret hope was that when I opened my eyes, the offender would be gone. 1, 2, 3, I counted slowly. I held my breath as long as possible, and then I sneaked a peek. To my relief, the rattlesnake had slithered off the path. I just made out the tail as it slid under the nearby rock. I know it was not quite out of danger yet, and I needed to get away as quickly as possible. Taking one small step backwards, I slowly turned my body around, inch by inch, walked away from the rocky outcropping. When I was well away from the area, I let out my breath. I didn't realize I had been holding it. Sweat dripped down my face, my hands were shaking. The imminent danger was over, and fear was replaced with relief. Okay, now, this is why I want you to follow me when I do the highlighting. We know that this is the second paragraph of my main event. So you can go ahead and take your blue and go ahead and underline all of that second paragraph. Don't start on the third one until I tell you, because there's a place that you need to stop. Okay? At the end of the main event is going to be the conclusion to your story. All right, it's where you bring your whole story into a conclusion, into an ending. All right, and it's only going to be a couple of sentences long. So I want you to watch me as I'm highlighting this. To my relief, the rattlesnake slithered off the path, just made out the tail as it slid under the nearby rock. I know I was not quite out of danger yet, and I needed to get away as quickly as possible. Taking one small step backwards, I slowly turned my body around inch by inch and walked away from the rocky outcropping. When I was well away from the area, I let out my breath. I didn't realize I had been holding it. Sweat dripped down my face. My hands were shaking. All right. That is part of the main idea. Now, I want you to take your brown colored pencil or marker, and then the imminent danger was over and fear was replaced with relief. Doesn't that tell me how my whole story just ended? I am now out of danger, and I am now feeling relieved. And it tells me what I did. Pulling the canteen off of my waist, I took a long, thirsty swig. I wiped my brow and decided to head back to the cabin. This was enough adventure for one day. This right here is my conclusion. Okay? It ends, okay, it is part of my last paragraph of my main event. Okay? So, the last couple of sentences of your main event is going to be your conclusion. It's not a separate paragraph. All right? That is your conclusion. So, we've gone through everything except for we have one more section left, and that is the extended ending. So, I want you to take your purple. Okay? It looks blue, but it's purple. All right? this is your extended ending. Extended ending is like after the adventure is over. Okay, I know I'm safe and everything, but it's kind of like what we call an epilogue in a book. It tells you what happens, or it kind of points you to what maybe is going to happen next. And so in my story, it says, when I got back to the cabin, I sat down heavily on the wooden rocking chair. My head was still spinning as I realized what might have happened if the rattlesnake had bitten me. I was determined to continue my desert quest, but tomorrow I would not drag my feet and create a thick cloud of dust. Remaining clear-headed was the best thing I could have done, that and reading the guidebook. The guidebook saved my life. Okay, so this very last paragraph is what we call an extended ending. Okay, this is the conclusion. This brings everything in my entire story to a conclusion right here. But it's kind of one of those things, don't leave me hanging, all right? And so your extended ending is something that you're going to add to the end so that you're not leaving your reader hanging. You're telling them what has happened next. And we're going to talk about extended ending and about different techniques that you use for that, all right? But the extended ending is the last paragraph of your paper. All right, so I want you to make sure that you understand how this works, because a lot of times what I'll get this in its own paragraph, or I'll get this and this pushed together, and all of this is all scrunched. That's not what I want. On the rubric, I give you specific instructions on how I want this written. All right, so I hope you understand this. We're hopefully going to go over more of this at school before we start on hooks. But you're going to be starting on your hooks, and you're planning your adventure fairly soon. So I need for you to take page 6 and 7, put your name and number on the top of it, go ahead and staple it together, and put it in your doc folder so that I can check to make sure that you did the video with me. I'm going to leave this posted on RenWeb in case you want to see an example when you start writing your paper of kind of what my expectations are for writing your paper. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you at school.